the night enveloped the world in its inky embrace as I embarked on the lonely drive home. The road stretched before me like a sinister ribbon, illuminated only by the feeble glow of my headlights. With each passing mile, the darkness seemed to deepen, casting eerie shadows that danced along the edges of my vision. As I navigated the winding road, a sense of unease settled over me, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move from the depths of the surrounding forest. The trees loomed ominously overhead, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers grasping for something just out of reach. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the side of the road, bathed in the dim glow of my headlights. My heart leaped into my throat as I swerved to avoid it, the tires screeching against the asphalt. But as quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness, leaving me shaken but unharmed. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew there was something more sinister at play, something lurking in the shadows waiting to reveal itself. As I continued on my journey, the road seemed to stretch on endlessly, twisting and turning through the heart of the forest. Strange shapes flitted at the edge of my vision, fleeting glimpses of something not quite human darting between the trees. A sense of dread coiled in the pit of my stomach as I realized I was no longer alone on that desolate road. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With trembling hands, I gripped the steering wheel tighter, willing myself to push on despite the overwhelming fear threatening to consume me. But the darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating me with its oppressive presence. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, a faint glimmer of light appeared on the horizon, signaling the end of my journey. With a sense of relief, I pressed down on the accelerator, eager to escape the clutches of the night. As I emerged from the darkness and into the safety of the city lights, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me, something malevolent and hungry for my soul. But as I glanced back at the road I had traveled, I knew one thing for certain. Some roads should never be traveled alone, especially not at night. And as I reached the safety of my home, I made a vow never to venture out on that treacherous road again, knowing that whatever lurked in the darkness would always be waiting, just beyond the reach of the headlights. I am a taxi driver. I mostly do the night shifts because where I work, there are a lot fewer cars on the road than during the day. This one night, I was driving around, waiting to see if someone wants a ride or calls the company I work for. I knew that this one bar would be closing soon, so I headed over to it when I saw this lady waiting on the side of the road. I pulled up and asked, "Do you need a ride?" She just nodded her head and got into the back of my taxi. I asked where she wanted to go, but she didn't answer my question. A couple of seconds went by, and I heard her softly say a place, so I started driving. We were almost there, but just a street before her stop. I looked in my mirror to see if she was all right. She wasn't there, so I pulled over and thought she might be laying down. I got out and checked, but she was gone. I told some people I work with, and they think I gave a ghost a ride that night. Let's just say I hope she could move on. There it was on the side of the road. This human-looking thing, but it was standing on all fours with the head of a deer. I didn't feel like sticking around to see if it was friendly. I stepped on the gas, but to my shock, it was keeping up with my car, getting ever so closer, making this noise that cracked my window. I could feel it. This is the end for me. But just as fast as it had appeared, it was gone, and I was back on a lit road. I don't know what I saw that night, but I feel if I had stopped or slowed down at all, I wouldn't be here right now. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the darkness of the night. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white against the black leather. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine, the rhythm of my heartbeat matching its cadence. I had been driving for hours, the monotony of the road hypnotizing me into a trance-like state. As I navigated the desolate highway, my mind wandered to the events of the day. It had been a long and exhausting journey, filled with deadlines and demands. All I wanted now was to reach the comfort of my home, to escape the pressures of the outside world and lose myself in the sanctuary of solitude. But as the miles ticked by, a sense of unease crept over me, like a shadow looming on the edge of my consciousness. The darkness outside seemed to press in on all sides, suffocating me with its weight. I glanced nervously at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. shaking my head to dispel the irrational fear. I forced myself to focus on the road ahead. But try as I might, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being followed by something unseen and malevolent. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine as I realized I had taken a wrong turn. The road ahead was unfamiliar, shrouded in darkness and devoid of any signs or markers. Panic surged within me, threatening to overwhelm my senses. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a signal to guide me back on course. But the screen remained blank, mocking my futile efforts. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized I was lost, adrift in a sea of shadows with no compass to guide me home. Swallowing my fear, I made a decision to press on, hoping against hope that I would stumble upon familiar territory. But the road seemed to twist and turn at will, leading me deeper into the heart of darkness. Strange shapes loomed at the edge of my vision, fleeting glimpses of something sinister lurking just beyond the reach of my headlights. As I rounded a bend, a figure materialized in the middle of the road, blocking my path. My heart leaped into my throat as I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching in protest. The figure stood motionless, bathed in the eerie glow of my headlights, its features obscured by the shadows. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as I stared into the abyss of its empty gaze. Then with a jolt, I realized it was no ordinary person standing before me. Its form flickered and shifted, morphing into something monstrous and grotesque. With a cry of terror, I threw the car into reverse, the engine roaring to life as I sped away from the apparition. But no matter how fast I drove, it seemed to pursue me, a relentless specter haunting my every move. Fueled by sheer adrenaline, I careened around curves and barreled down straightaways, desperate to escape the clutches of whatever malevolent force pursued me. But no matter how far I drove, the road stretched on endlessly, a labyrinth of nightmares from which there was no escape. As dawn broke on the horizon, I found myself back where I had started, the familiar sights and sounds of civilization surrounding me once more. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled out of the car, shaken but alive. But as I looked back at the road I had traveled, I knew that I would never forget the horrors that lurked in the darkness, waiting to ensnare unwary travelers like myself. And though I may never fully understand what I had encountered that night, one thing was certain. Some roads are best left untraveled, lest they lead to madness and despair. With a vow to avoid that cursed road, I left, determined to put the nightmare behind me and cherish the safety of my home. Grateful to have escaped the clutches of the unknown horrors that lurked in the night. I need to tell someone what happened that night. I still really don't know if it was real or not, but that night will never leave my mind. So just for a bit of backstory, I am a truck driver. I usually do the early shifts, but one of my coworkers was out sick, and they needed someone to cover for him. Well, I took it. I could use the extra pay, so they gave me the details for where I was going, and this was going to be a long one. I went and got some energy drinks and some food for the drive. I knew there were stops in between, but I felt good that night that I could make it. So it starts out like every other night. Listening to some music, having some of my coffee. I was on the highway for a couple of hours. I needed to stop at a rest stop, so I found the closest one. Oh boy, was that not a good plan? I pulled in, and the place was dead except for my truck and one other car. So I went in and did what I had to do, and was about to get back in my truck when I saw this guy hiding just behind it. I was thinking, okay, that's weird. He was not looking my way, just looking into the trees. I looked around, and the other car that was here is now gone. Maybe this guy got left behind. I don't know, something was off with this person. I just could not put my finger on it though, but I had a bad feeling. At this point, I have been looking at this guy for a good bit, and I have yet to see him move. Well, I said I have to get him to move so I can leave. So I walk over to him and said, "Hey buddy, are you all right? If so, can you move so I can leave? I am on the clock." He did not even look at me, or even act as if I did not say anything, just standing there staring at the woods. The closer I got to this person, the more scared I felt, like they were making me feel fear. Well, I just walked up to them. Now I am so close I can smell him. He smells like old meat if you left it out for weeks. I went to put my hand to touch him, then he quickly looked at me. This scared me. I jumped back, but when I looked at him, he was not human. He was more like a monster. I can say the next part makes me sick to think about, but let's just say you'd be running for the hills if you see this man. So I got up and got into my truck as fast as I could and pulled out of there so fast. I looked back in my mirror and saw no one there at all. Let's just say that I will not be stopping at that rest stop anymore. I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me one night when I was driving home from work. I looked at my GPS and it said there was an accident on the route I usually take, so I had to do something I don't like to do. Take the back streets. Now, most of you might be thinking, what's wrong with that? Well, it's really dark, and the road itself isn't that big. There are only 2 lanes and not much space on either side. So I just drove slowly, hoping that if a car came and they were going fast, maybe I could move to the side faster. But this night, another car was the least of my worries. I started the drive down the back streets, and it started out fine, just your typical drive home. But then, in the distance, I swear to God, I saw a kid walking into the woods. I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, until I got up to the spot where they walked into. I came to a stop and grabbed my phone, shining my light into the woods. I stayed there looking for a good 10 minutes. I was about to leave when I saw them. 3 kids hiding behind the trees, but they didn't look right. Their eyes were all black and their skin was pale. They were getting close to my car. Finally, I snapped out of it and got out of there as fast as I could. Or just know, I'll never be going down that road at night again.